Okay, let's continue with some basic queries. So once the stock query object my run is initialized, you'll typically see that it prints some sort of a report. This report is actually coming from BuildStockQuery report query get success report function call. So you can actually get the same report by getting the report from the report object. Oops, sorry. So what you can understand what this column header means from the docker string here. So the fail is number of simulation that failed, unapplicable is number of building to which the upgrade didn't apply, sum is the first three column, no change is number of successful simulation that didn't have any change in values for end use, bad change is number of successful simulation that had bad changes. It's considered a bad change if none of the fuel has any reduction in energy consumption and at least one fuel has an increase in energy consumption. So all of these are kind of a shorthand way to spot any clearing errors in the run, so which we typically use for debugging purpose. For a published result, these may not be as useful. However, it still provides some information about what kind of changes a particular upgrade does. For example, in this report we see the upgrade 6. It applies to 99.3% of the building, whereas upgrade 7 it only applies to 73% of the building, of which you see that 1% has no change and 1.9% have bad change, which is essentially that for 1.9% of the building at least one fuel usage increased with no decrease in any other fuel. So this could be something as simple as addition of a particular end use. So you don't get a lot of details from this, but at least it gives a big picture overview of what's going on. Anyway, that's for the success report that gets printed as soon as you initialize the BuildStockQuery object. You can optionally also skip this report, and this is useful if you don't care to get this report, which would be a sensible thing to do for a published report, and this can kind of speed up the initialization of the query object. So you can do this if you want. And then this run object provides a bunch of different function to get the data from the dataset. So get results CSV4 downloads the metadata and the annual results. There are the get BuildStock TF, which is the characteristics file. So for each building ID we get the different building characteristics, and these are for the upgrades, which includes the upgrade number here, and it also gives the annual result for that particular upgrade. So there is another notebook here which has more examples with the aggregates query. So let's go to that. So the same idea here, initialize the object first. We can ignore or skip the report if required. So here's an example of annual aggregation. We are using the myRun object with run dot aggregation object, and then aggregate annual. And there are a lot of different arguments it takes. So the one we're using here is end users, and then you need to specify the end use we want. For this case, let's stick with this, and then we can optionally group it by different things. So we can do the same one, and we can also restrict by, so the restrict is just sequence of tuple and then column and a string. So it's a sequence, so it can be a list and tuple. So the first one is in data state, and what I want is only Colorado. So this works. For example, if you mess things up, for example, forget to include the tuple, the type checker will warn you. So if you do that, this will aggregate the total energy consumption, group by building type, and only focus on Colorado. There are similar queries we can do with time series. Time series also has additional argument for timestamp grouping function that lets you do monthly aggregation. So here you see the timestamp is January, February, March, April. So one point worth mentioning here is when you do these queries, the results of these queries are all in memory. There's a feature in BuildStockQuery to commit them to a cache file. So if you, after you have done the queries, if you run the save cache, BuildStockQuery will save all the output from the queries that are run using this BuildStockQuery object to a pickle file inside the BSQ cache folder. The value of this is that next time you restart your notebook, and when you come back, all of your queries will be super fast because the result of these queries are already stored in the cache. So it's a good idea to run the save cache at the end of your notebook if you want to be able to redo these queries quickly the next time.